Welcome to NREI's Common Area Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the award-winning editorial staff at NREIonline.com. Let's jump right into this week's podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Common Area with your host, David Bodamer. Today, I get to actually sit with the audience members and listen because David has brought a guest onto the show. He's in studio, and that is Adam Schwartz. Adam Schwartz of Walker Dunlop, to be specific. Adam is the Senior Managing Director and joined Walker & Dunlop in January of 2020 as part of the AKS Capital Partners acquisition. Adam is responsible for sourcing and structuring debt and equity financing for all commercial real estate asset classes throughout the country. Adam also serves as co-head of the New York Capital Markets practice. Gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm so excited to be sitting here and learning from the masters.
Thanks, Eric. How are you this week?
Man, I am doing great, David. Adam, thank you so much for being on the show.
I appreciate you having me. Thanks, guys.
Heck yeah. It's David's decision. It's not mine, but I'm going to trust him in this.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
And so, David, now I got to ask the question, why did you bring Adam on the show?
I wanted to get Adam in here because of this recent deal that, Walker & Dunlop buying AKS. I was hoping to just kind of get a feel for how that deal came together. And my understanding was that, AKS had broken off from JLL and then now it's going in Walker. So just like, it seems like a very active little stretch for your group. It seems pretty exciting. And it seems to mean big things for Walker & Dunlop in New York, because I think historically it's not been a market that has had a huge presence. And so just wanted to kind of get a feel for all that.
Right. It's actually funny. I think if you would have told me once we started AKS, which we started in August of 2019, one, we never even planned on selling. And two, if you told me I would end up at Walker & Dunlop, I wouldn't believe you guys. So, I worked at JLL for 3 years with my partners who worked at JLL, I believe, for 5 years, which is Aaron Appel, my brother, John Schwartz, and Keith Curlin. As you guys know, JLL bought HFF. Right. And for a myriad of reasons, I think, John, Keith, Aaron, and myself thought it was the right time for us to go on our own. So we started the business in early August, probably 6 weeks thereafter. We had a couple calls from some other people. We said, we're not interested. Got this call somehow through Walker & Dunlop. I don't know how much I can tell you about how we got that call. But, basically we started discussions and then we ultimately came to a deal. And now I'm working at Walker & Dunlop here in New York. That's kind of how it went about. And we started with 4 people, just the 4 partners, and we got all the way up to 15 people. And now we're about 16, and we probably will add some more people now that we're in the Walker & Dunlop umbrella.
So this group that you talked about, this group that your brother and these other pros, is there kind of a sweet spot for the kind of deals that you've done in the past, or what kind of defines you guys?
Right. So I think, the really unique thing about us is that 80% of our business was in New York and the rest we, follow clients around the country. But I would say 90 to 95% of our business was private owners. So when you're working at a big company like JLL, a lot of people are, doing a lot of business with the sales team, or a lot of business with the leasing team. We were primarily doing our business with just our core clients. And we were actually able to make that move and start AKS, which I think is, a testament to the 4 of us as, depending on what type of group you're in, sometimes, you work together. There's a lot of synergies. Now, we did business with the sales guys. We did business with the leasing guys. I wish we did more. But I think, as, again, a testament to us 4 is we have our own book of business and our own clients. So when we started AKS Capital Partners, I think maybe we lost 5% of our business.
Oh, wow.
And that's probably more of customer business versus client business.
Right.
I think we were very lucky in that sense, where I don't know how many other groups would have been able to just go on their own and start that business.
And so then, you said this was then kind of unexpected for this very quickly now turn into being part of the Walker & Dunlop family. So why does that make sense?
Right. So the funny thing is, in the first part, every time we see people now, they're like, oh, you guys knew this from day one. You knew. I was like, no, we really had no idea we were even planning on doing this. One of the things that we were really attracted to Walker & Dunlop was their agency business. And, they're number 1 in Fannie. Right. They have a Freddie license, do HUD. They're extremely well respected in that space. And then also a tremendous amount of their business is just servicing that agency business. And we have a bunch of other clients that we do business with that we weren't getting their agency business, and we're doing their commercial business. But on the agency side, they were using Walker & Dunlop or one of their competitors. So we said to ourselves, wow, there's a gap where we can start getting more business from some of their clients that they can't service. Right. So now you have a guy that does a lot of business with a client that does multifamily business, is only doing their permanent loan business, and they do construction, or they do bridge loans and stuff that, those guys may have not been as keen to try and call one of their clients and say, hey, I have these guys in New York. They do this type of business. So we think we can extract some business on that front, one. Two, we also feel we can do a lot more agency business because of Walker and Dunlop's platform, right? They're extremely well respected in the market. They do a ton of business. They know that product inside and out better than the four of us know it. So we think, that twofold can help us do a lot more business. And lastly, in New York, they don't really have that much of a presence because historically New York is really a bank market. If a lot of these buildings, these, call it 20 to $80 million deals, even, $100 million deals are usually not going agency. They're going to the community banks. They're either life companies, but really not a tremendous amount of agency business being done in the city.
Yeah.
And also, not to get too granular, with the rent stabilization laws changing, we're seeing a lot of, the banks have pulled back. And now, we're doing a lot of business that we used to do with banks. We're doing with the CMBS market, and we might go agency now. So, right, you just got to kind of understand what's going on in the market and, follow the trends or find the trends before they get there, so to speak.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, it definitely caught my eye when the deal went down for that reason, just because I've always considered Walker and Dunlop has this great book of business, but, they're just sort of seen as never just like as necessarily being here. So this is just seems like a really exciting time for everything.
Right. I think New York is probably I'd say the number one market in the country and obviously one of the biggest in the world. So now you're taking a group that, historically has been one of the top groups in New York. And now you add that to your platform. I think, that was what I really probably, outside of just the book of business that we have, I think that's probably, I can't speak for them. That's probably what I think they were thinking, why they were interested in acquiring us.
So now looking to the market, you kind of touched on something that I was curious about. We've got a couple of things happening now. I mean, one thing, like you said, in New York City, but it's also happening elsewhere. The question of rent regulation, how that's going to affect multifamily lending. You could talk about that a little bit more. Also just curious in general, like what you think, how the next 6 to 12 months look overall for financing, and if there's, I don't know if this coronavirus thing is kind of shaking things up a bit, making people slow down at all, or if it's more just a lot of talk right now. I mean, what's happening, kind of day to day in the deal making and the conversations that you're having with folks in the market?
Right. So I would say, the debt markets are as active as they've ever been. Our group's probably busier this year in the first quarter than we were the last 3 years, and I never would have thought that, but I continue to be wrong, and we're doing more and more business every year. As to the coronavirus, I would say that it only really is affecting, Wall Street paper right now. And, so that's a different kind of product that wouldn't really affect the community bank deals. But, this week, I'm sure some of the guys at the big Wall Street banks are having trouble pricing deals and understanding the market. But as a whole, the markets are really healthy. The debt markets are on fire. And, outside of really condo deals, we haven't really seen a pullback at all in the market, to be honest with you. And then on the multifamily front here in the city, I would say just from, with the new rent stabilization laws, probably just the community banks pulling back a little bit. And, some different types of lenders, again, life cos and Wall Street banks are getting more active into that space because of the way the community banks have pulled back. Good time to borrow money right now, obviously. Rates are extremely cheap. I guess it's a good time to be in our business. And
with those kind of rent control things, is that a bigger risk for existing loans? It seems like the issue could be if you underwrote a deal at a certain rent assumptions or certain operating, and now that's been thrown into flux. But then for underwriting new deals, can you not just price that in?
Right. So I think, it's twofold. It's, we did a deal a year and a half ago in the East Village. Client bought a building, reconfigure some units, get some rent stabilized tenants out, and pop rents. Now you're not able to do that, right? So on the exit strategy for lenders, they're not underwriting that rent growth anymore, right? So it's a completely different type of business. And also on the refinance for community bank loan, the rents haven't gone up, and now they're not going to go up. So now, trying to sell that upside there is no upside anymore in the near future, right? With the way the laws are. So I think that's definitely affected the value add opportunities on the multifamily front, where there's a stabilization component to the deals, and also for how the banks are looking at deals. And then also on the sales market, right? If you're an investment sales broker here in the city, I remember how many deals our client called us, I bought a building, it's 70% free market, 30%, affordable. I'm going to be able to buy that long-term, get some of the, stabilized tenants out and pop rents. That whole business plan is gone.
Yeah.
That part of the market has evaporated, right now. So interested to see what happens in the near future and also long-term, but, that's where we've seen the most impact.
Right. But then outside the multifamily space, looking at other property types for, there's not that kind of thing that we're dealing with.
No, I mean, listen, there's probably, some people that might want to sell a building for a certain price and they're not getting that price, but, lucky for us, that's where they usually go to refinance the deal, right? So that's where we're probably seeing an uptick in refinances. We're doing a lot more refinances than acquisitions here in the city, for sure.
Going back to this, group, I'm very interested in this, that you've been working with your brother and these other, kind of curious just how that came together, what that's like, and what is it about just having this kind of like core that you guys like so much?
Right. So it's actually funny. Aaron, Keith, and John have been working together probably for almost 10 years now, I want to say. And I've been working with the three of them for 5.
Okay.
I was actually, before I joined JLL, where my brother, Keith, and Aaron were, I was actually at Cooper Harwitz.
Okay.
I went from Cooper Harwitz to JLL. And then, the first couple of months there, we weren't partners, so to speak, yet. And then we joined this partnership. And then it's really been great. And I would say, just the transparency, right? When, we sit down every week, we go over the pipeline, we say, who's working on this kind of deal? Oh, I have this deal.
Mm-hmm.
There's a deal, I have a meeting, tomorrow about an interesting deal. So, I'll pick their brain. Keith is working on a certain kind of deal right now that fits that framework. Having that transparency and having those guys in the room to just bounce off ideas just makes everybody else so much more efficient and smarter in the room, right? In our business, you're dealing with a lot of very, very smart and intelligent people, and you have to be able to create value, right? So when you're in these meetings or you're trying to pitch business, you have to be able to gain an edge or be able to add value for the prospective client that's in the room. And I'm a very firm believer in more people in the room creates way more value, right? Me being in a meeting by myself, not, having transparency of all the other deals that, my partners are working on,
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd be a third as efficient or third as effective. And I think that, they would agree with me on that front as well. So, I think that our business collectively together has probably all grown, probably 15 to 20% by us all working together,
Okay.
right? There's certain accounts, obviously, that I control, or John has a great relationship with a certain guy, or Keith or Aaron. But, collectively as a whole, we really make a very big and keen effort to be fully transparent with each other, know all the meetings that are coming up, all the deals we were working on. So, it helps our clients, 1, and 2, it helps us get new business.
So it's basically like all 4 of you are out there, like working with your clients, finding some new deals, and then coming back together just like daily. I mean, how does that kind of ebb and flow work? Is it, and you guys, sure you're doing a lot of running around, meeting with people, doing that kind of stuff all the time.
Right. There's a lot of running around, and there's a lot of times, we're in the office, we're just bouncing ideas off each other. I say, I know that, Aaron's working on a certain deal on the Upper East Side. I'm like, oh, hey, where's that deal pricing?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're doing a condo deal? What are they underwriting for condos a foot there? Right. So just little things like that. You never know, because you could have a dinner that night and then you're speaking with somebody and he's doing a very similar type deal. So, it just makes everybody smarter.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually just at this point, it's just a natural flow.
Right.
Right. I'd say our office is never quiet. At
that
no
good
point.
Or bad?
You'd have to ask some of the other guys in the office. I think it's good.
Yeah.
But there's definitely, and I would say 70% of that is work and 30% of that is having fun, which I think is very important as well.
So do you live in the city?
I do. I live in Greenwich Village.
Oh, nice. How long have you lived in the city?
I've lived in the city for 10 years now.
Yeah. Do you go to Dante?
No, you know where I go a lot is this place called B&H. It's a diner on.
I know that place. Yeah.
I go to Abrazo and B&H.
Okay.
That's my morning ritual.
Nice.
I like that place. Well, before I lived in Greenwich Village, I lived in the East Village. I loved living down there. I miss that area.
Yeah, I lived in the East Village for about 7 years.
Oh, whereabouts?
So, most of it on East 11th Street, but I did spend a year in St. Mark's.
There you go. I lived on 7th between A and B.
Okay, nice.
Which was, and I have to wear a suit every day to work, which is very interesting because
that's not the East Village.
That's not the East Village, no. But
do you ever get to do deals back there in these villages?
It's funny. The first deal I ever did in New York was a walk-up apartment on 9th Street between B and C.
Okay.
I used to walk by there, be like, oh, that's the first deal I ever did. But I haven't. I should actually go by that building actually and see what's going on right now.
Yeah, I think there used to. I don't know. At one point there was like this really crazy dive bar on 9 and like 9C. I think it was what it was called. It's not there anymore.
I went to a lot of dive bars in the East Village. Wow.
They're not as many of them
Niagara.
anymore.
No, there was actually a really cool speakeasy in between Niagara and my apartment that I think it was called Lovers No More.
Huh, I don't know
that people went to. But
I know Niagara. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good spot. But
we're getting very in the New York brass tacks here, but that's what happens. But you've gotten to do a deal back there, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, listen, I love that area. I loved living there. A lot of my friends lived there when I was living there. So being in your mid-20s, living in the East Village with a bunch of friends is can't go wrong, really.
Yeah.
But and then on the business front, we've done a lot of business down there. We did the Steiner East Village project. Mm-hmm. We did the Avenue A project for Magnum. We've done a lot of business down there, and seeing the neighborhood grow.
Yeah, that does seem pretty wild to be able to kind of come to New York, be starting out living in the neighborhood, and now be a part of its evolution. It's
actually really cool when you're working on a deal, and I forget what was there before the Steiner project, and you're like, oh wow, I know it's going to be there in 18 months, and you're talking to your friends that are non-real, so you're like, oh, that's actually going to be a condo building, or there's going to put an office building there, and so it's just interesting to see how the city transforms, and just knowing that that's going to change the area. Yeah. So it's cool.
Yeah, very cool. All right, well, thank you. I want to thank you so much for coming in, taking some time. This sounds like it's been a very busy but exciting time for you and this group, and it seems like big things ahead.
Thanks for having me. I hope so. Good things ahead only. All right. Thanks, David.
Thanks. Guys, this is fantastic. I will tell you, I've never been to New York. David has told me I need to visit. I'm trying to figure out where the heck you guys are talking about. I've heard of the East Village.
Now you know to go to the East Village.
Now I know to go to the East Village, and you gave me some really good ideas on some dive bars. So I appreciate that.
Some of them are gone, unfortunately. Niagara is still there, though.
Well, see, then I can do some investigative reporting for you and just sample a lot from those different establishments that are still there. I have no problem doing that, David. Just sign me up. All right, Adam, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. And it was a great podcast, great information. And I look forward to hearing what the results of this podcast are as far as how the audience perceives it and what they learn, because that's what we're trying to do here. And I know that it's David's heart to educate the masses. So, again, thanks for being here. And, David, thank you so much for bringing him in.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. And thank you, audience, for listening to the Common Area Podcast with David Bodamer. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when David comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your colleagues. Again, thanks for listening today. For everyone at NREI, this is Eric Johnson inviting you back in 2 weeks for all the stories that matter to you. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Common Area Podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of NREI or Informa. The content has been made available for information and educational purposes only.